me, Jahenns Manigat, aka Canadian Red Bull. This is all presented by the Field of 68 Media Network. So remember to like and subscribe to stay in touch with all the content that we have on college hoops from not only myself representing the Creighton Blue Jays, but a bunch of different hosts representing their alma maters as well. And also don't forget to download the Locker Room app where we'll be doing post-game and pre-game shows where we get to interact with fans. You guys get to type in or actually speak your questions to us, and we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. Today, on our 10th episode of the Welcome to the J podcast, we have a very, very, very special guest from Wichita Falls, Texas. He scored 2,167 collegiate points, including 1,292 as a Blue Jay. He's on a short list with Doug McDermott and Bob Foreman as the only Blue Jays with multiple 600-point seasons. He was first team All Big East in 2017 and 2018, All Big 12 second team and newcomer team, and All Rookie team as a freshman. As a pro so far, he's played in Korea, Lebanon, Israel, Greece, as well as 2 stints in the NBA Summer League. He's a two-guard with better post moves than most of your 4s and 5s out there. Marcus Foster, baby. Welcome to the J, boy.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's a privilege to be on here.
It's good to see you, man. How you living? How you holding up?
I'm cool. Just trying to make it out here in this weird time. We've been on lockdown for like going on 4 months now, so we've just been at the house.
COVID season's been crazy, right?
Man, it's been different. It's one of the weirdest
What kind of restrictions do they have you guys under? Because I know, like, here in Lithuania, like, you can't even walk outside without wearing a mask. Like, the social distance in stores especially is like all-time high crucial. So what kind of restrictions do they have you under?
Yeah, so like you can't go anywhere without a mask. Like, so you have to text a number. Like, say if you want to just go walking or go to the grocery store, you have to text a number in order to leave the house. But as far as that, we're only allowed to go to the basketball gym and back to the house, besides if we're traveling. So, yeah, they got them strict restrictions. They let us off of lockdown for a week. Then everything got bad again, so they put us right back on lockdown. So, yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy. Like, at least it helps you focus on ball, right? You just go home, come back, you go to practice, come back, that's it. No distractions, no in-between stuff, no shenanigans.
Exactly right. That's why I feel bad for some of my teammates, the ones that just go into the gym and going home by themselves. At least I have my daughter and my wife out here, so that makes it a whole lot better.
That definitely makes it a whole lot better. So before we take a deep dive into your career, obviously where you're at right now, we got to talk about the boys. I know you still stay in touch with the team. You still watch when you can, all that stuff. Tomorrow, the boys play Villanova at home. I always know Villanova is a tough team. You always know Villanova is a tough team. What is it about Villanova and Creighton that game is always a super hype game? It's always going to be a super challenging one. And basically, both teams have to come out guns blazing in order to get a victory.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a tough one just because, especially in these recent years, Creighton and Villanova being one of the top teams in the country, top teams in the conference. So, anytime they meet up, and honestly, it's like the coaches, you got Jay Wright on one side and Greg McDermott, 2 great coaches. So it's always a good game. That's all everybody always looks forward to playing Villanova just because how they play. And it's always tough. We always used to talk about how to beat Villanova. You have to be more perfect than them. Because they don't mess up at all.
They don't make little mistakes. They don't make little mistakes.
They stay solid. They're gonna use the pump fake. They're gonna take the open shot. So, that's always one thing you got to consider coming in and being disciplined. So it's gonna be a good game. I'm definitely gonna be tuned in for that one.
Yeah. What's been your impression of this year's team? Like I said, I know that you're watching. I know that you're keeping your nose to the ground, paying attention, and all that stuff. So, what's been your impression of this year's team? How far do you think this team can actually go?
Yeah, I think with this team, they're still trying to figure it out. They're still a good team. You know what I'm saying? There are days where they're looking like, okay, they're one of the best teams in the country, but there's days where they're not. And you got Marcus. I know he just got back a few weeks ago from his injury, and then he had surgery in offseason, so it's tough too. And I've always said it's hard not to play in CenturyLink or now Shy Center without the fans. Even for me this season, it's tough not playing with fans, so you don't have that extra.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Especially, there's some games you go into, you like, okay, I don't feel like playing, but once that crowd gets you going, you get that energy. So then you start getting into that mode. But I know it's tough for them not having the fans when you played in front of the fans, since their whole time being there, not having them. But I think the best thing about this team is they have so many weapons, and that's what it takes to win in the tournament.
Right.
You can't have just one guy because if that one guy is not playing at his best in the tournament, they end up losing. So I think with having multiple weapons, it'll help this team out during the stretch in the tournament.
Your senior year was Mitch Ballock's freshman year, and also DJ was incoming transfer, so he had to sit out that year. How crazy is it to see those guys' development where they're at now compared to like where they were at then? When I'm sure you guys
Yeah.
went at it in practice, I'm sure you taught them a few lessons on the court for sure. But how crazy it is to see like how good of players they've developed into, and now they're the leaders of the team that you were a leader of when you were a senior.
It's crazy, especially like in Mitch Ballock's situation. I've known him
Mhm.
since he was in eighth grade. He used to come
Right.
to Kansas State all the time and play in open gyms with us. So I've known him for a while, and I followed his career all the way through high school because I knew how good of a player he was. And, I remember I got to host Mitch on my when I was a junior. I got to host him for his visit, and just to be around him. I've never been around a guy like that. Like, usually you want to go out or do stuff, hang out with people. He's like, let's go to the gym. I'm like, that's what you want
Right.
to do on your visit. So,
Yeah.
I've always respected him, and he's one of the hardest working players I've ever played with. And to see DJ, especially come out of his shell this season, because last year he had some injuries and kept battling back and forth. So to see him coming out of shell and being the player that I've always known he could be, it's just amazing to see.
DJ's been my favorite player to watch all year. I've repeated it about, I don't know, like 50,000 times on this podcast. His impact on the game, not only obviously scoring, he can do that, but it's the rebounding, it's the leadership, it's the toughness, it's all the 50-50 balls that he's able to get. What has impressed you the most about him, like personally, and just seeing like obviously the things that he can do, not only affecting the game by scoring, but in multiple different ways?
Really just like being there through his process when he first got there and seeing the player he was. Being honest, DJ wasn't as nowhere near the level he is now. So to see him come in from day one and adapt to the system and learn and then go through some adversity that he learned, I just like the fact that, he got that dog in him and he doesn't let anything hold him back. And he comes prepared every day and at least he's going to give you something. If he's not scoring, he's going to do some on the defensive end. If he's not knocking down shots, he's going to try to rebound. So that's what I love about him, and just being there for the process and seeing where he is now, it makes me happy to see.
Let's talk about you for a little bit. The pride of Hershey High scored a career 2,388 points. Yo, Marcus, you've been a bucket, boy. You've been a bucket. What? How? Like, look, I didn't play high school basketball in the States, so like when I look at
Mhm.
numbers like that, I try to think I think about my high school career back in Canada. I don't even know if I got anywhere close to that, and I was considered a really good player. So, uh, when did it start that you realized, yo, putting the ball through a hoop is easy? That's easy for me.
It really started like eighth grade. So like me, crazy thing is me growing up being in Texas, like I wanted to play football. Like that's what I wanted to do. But then being in Texas and how
Right.
serious it is and how big everybody was, I'm like, I'm not trying to get hit like that. So I started really focusing in on basketball. My going into my eighth grade year, I started just focusing in on it. And, my mom found this guy that was a trainer down there, and I just started working out with him, and I just started taking it serious. And I played varsity as a freshman, so each year that helped. And also I played on the AU circuit with the Dallas Mustangs, and we were top five in the country every single year. So, we're playing the best players. So, I've gone up against all the competition. I just really stuck to my game, know what I can do. Don't try to get outside of what I can do and just put the ball in the hole, really.
If people know you, they know that you're basically a gym rat. You're always in the gym. Always looking at new ways to get better, to perfect your craft. Where did you get that kind of work ethic from? Where you consistently stayed in the gym, obviously growing up, and I'm sure you do that again when you go back home in the summertime.
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of weird for me. Like my whole mindset growing up when I was in high school and elementary school type stuff, I was so focused on playing Division I basketball. Like NBA was never in my mind. Like I just really wanted to play Division I basketball because that's all me and my dad would sit up and watch. So, I knew what it took, especially being from a small place that I'm from. Not many people are coming down there to check out people from Wichita Falls. So I knew I had to be special. So, I just stuck with it and I always made sure I was in the gym if it's not in the morning after practice. And even to this day, that's one of the reasons why I still get jobs overseas because when teams call, they're like, "Hey, he's always in the gym, no matter if he's playing good or bad. He's staying extra or he's coming in early."
That's a lesson for all you kids out there. I'm telling you, man. Practice pays off, consistency
Yeah,
pays off. Obviously, Marcus, you're a walking testimony to that. Kids don't understand how tough it is. Like you said, you came from a small place. You understood at that point in your life, look, not a lot of people are going to come out here and recruit me. When I get my opportunity, I better stand out. And obviously, you
exactly.
did.
Hmm.
I'm sure before you commit to K-State, a ton of schools wanted you. This is one of my favorite questions to ask guys who come on the podcast. What other schools were you looking at straight out of high school? I'm going to ask you the same question, obviously, when you entered the transfer market. But straight out of high school, what schools were you looking at aside from K-State?
At the time it was Marquette, Texas, Lehigh, and Creighton. Those are my final five schools.
Yeah,
Which I
and you
always tell
obviously
people
did.
is crazy. I always tell people like, I'm happy I went to K State, but I always wish I could have went to Creighton my first year out of high school. I always wish that. And I
Yeah,
think if there's
it's
something I could change, I think that's something I would change and do. Because that team y'all
man.
had was special too.
Boy, we had a we had such a unit. Like we were just so like tightly wound together. Like nothing was gonna separate us. And off the court, man, honestly, some of the best times of my life. On the
Mm-hmm.
court, some of the best times of my life. I'm still really close friends, if not best friends, with a lot of those guys to this day. So, it's crazy that how the world works. You ended up being in a Creighton uniform too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I already mentioned you being, on the all newcomer team, all rookie team your freshman year, Big 12 second team. So when you hit that transfer portal, I'm sure schools are hitting you up asking for availability. So kind of talk to me about that process. You ultimately decide to choose Creighton, but talk about that process of once again being recruited by a whole bunch of schools, which the first time around obviously didn't have a chance to get you. The second time around, really wanting to have you in their program.
Yeah, it was the second time was crazy, especially coming off the 2 years I had. So like I had schools like Louisville, Florida, UConn, Miami,
Yeah.
Gonzaga. It was just crazy all the teams that was calling me. So, but then when it really came down to it, I'll never forget this. I went to the transfer portal on Tuesday. I had my release on Wednesday. Coach
Mhm.
McDermott came down to see me on Friday.
Oh,
So
gee. Coach,
that's
Coach
what I'm
Mack is
saying. He
on
came
it.
to see me on Friday. And he drove from Omaha, drove to Manhattan. Then he said he had to go to Kansas City. So that's why he did it. But he drove, came down to see me, talked to me for about almost 2 hours. And I was like, after that, I knew I was going to Creighton. It was
Right.
obvious, especially dealing with the people I was dealing with. I wasn't dealing with a lot of head coaches that was as serious as he was. And it was more not basketball, just trying to help me, navigate my life. So that's what I really appreciated the most.
Before all this, though, before we skip over your high school career, you had a chance, or not your high school career, your collegiate career, you had a chance to go to LeBron James Skills Academy. Talk to me about that experience. Obviously, being one of those players chosen is a big deal. You go into a camp like that, it really like helps put your name out there, especially on the NBA radar and the pro radar and stuff like that. So, talk to me about your personal experience. How you played, and talk to me about some of the guys who were in that camp alongside with you, who really stood out to you in your eyes.
Yeah, so that was a nerve-wracking thing for me because that was like the first time I've been on a scene where like NBA scouts is there and you're going against guys that are potentially going to be lottery picks. So that was like
Mhm.
nerve-wracking at first, but after that, I just really locked in and started playing. I was going against Terry Rozier every day. Like that was my one-on-one
Damn.
partner, and me and him had a lot of
Yeah.
battles. I also went against Jordan Mickey. George Niang was there. There was just a lot. Aaron White, he's on my team now, but it was just a lot of players.
That's crazy that he's on your team right
Exactly.
now. That's
It's
actually
crazy
crazy.
to
Yeah.
think about. You know what I'm saying? All the guys that I met, that I played at the LeBron camp and now I know personally, just through summer league or we might have worked out together in a couple of NBA workouts. So, that really helped take my career off too, as far as like getting noticed by the NBA.
You have never been a bashful player. I don't think there's a shot that you've ever taken that you didn't like. Talk to me about like obviously you're a very competitive guy. Like I've seen it so often when I go back to Omaha and I train in the summertime when you were still on the team. Uh, you're actually part of one of my favorite teams with you, with Watt, JP, Kyrie. I think Isaiah was a senior that year.
Mhm.
Cole. Man, when I was overseas and I stayed up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. to watch you guys play, that was one
Yeah.
of my favorite teams to watch from the time that I've graduated up until now. The connection that you and Kyrie have, when I used to go back and saw you guys just really beat each other up every single day, where did that kind of competitive nature obviously come from for you? And talk about what it did to not only help you get better, but in a guy like Kyrie, you really, really pushed him to get to that next level. While you guys were on the same team.
I think it just came from my friends really back home growing up. Like we're all competitive, like hide and seek, tag, all that. Like, like we're trying to win. So I
from
think that's
from
why.
the playground.
Yeah. So like growing up, then once I really got good at basketball, like I'm like, okay, if I'm stepping on the court, I'm trying to be the best one on the court, and I'm gonna talk trash to you. I'm gonna let you know. So that's where that all came from. And then, I noticed coming to Creighton, Kyrie immediately stuck out to me. You know what I'm saying? Of course, Justin Patton does. He's a 7-footer that can do anything. But Kyrie stuck out to me because, he's my height with long arms that can do so many things
Right.
that he didn't know. That if you know Kyrie, like he didn't know how good he was as a freshman until like he got older. But I think now the older he gets, the more he realizes how good he is. So that's one thing I always knew. Like, all right, if I'm going against Kyrie every day, and I want to go against Kyrie because he's the best defender in the conference. So I want to go against him every day, and I want to talk trash to him, and I want him to, be prepared for these games that we're going to have because you're going to go against guys that's like that or my same skill set. So and he didn't back down. That's why I like at first it was funny because he was quiet. Like I'll talk trash
Yeah.
to him. He wouldn't say a word, but then the older we got, the more he started talking trash to me and all that. So it was a good relationship to form, in the competitive nature.
I remember when I was back in the summertime and I think I stepped into a practice in a scrimmage with you guys. You guys actually like really got into it almost face to face. And I remember thinking, I don't think this is functional for a team to operate like this. As the summer obviously went on and I came to more practices, I just saw that it was a recurring theme where you were really, trying to just get under his skin to get the best out of them. I go overseas the next year, I watch you guys play, and the dynamic between you two works. So I was like,
Yeah.
hey, the boys figured it
Nah,
out. It is what it is, and that's
that's
what I
just
really loved
and
about
that's
it.
crazy. That's crazy because that's one thing I talked about, like, coming over because usually people never saw me as like the leader. After my junior year, they didn't see me as a leader of the team because just how I am, I'm laid back, I do my job, I'm gonna
Yeah,
talk trash to you, but I'm gonna work hard and all that.
Texas, you're
Yeah,
Texas.
exactly. So people didn't understand it, but no, the more time people like they really got to know me and understand, like, okay, like he's not talking trash because he doesn't like me. He's talking trash because he wants the best out of me. So now, when we got to the games and we're deep in games and we're having problems, and if I can look over and like if I can yell at you and tell you what to do and you respond in the right way, not thinking I'm hating on you or anything like that, I think that's how we knew we had a good team. Because I think on another note, people held me accountable in the same way. They look at me like, okay, if he talks to me this way, then I'm gonna talk to him this way too. And I respond because it's like, okay, now you get it, we're on the same page.
The standout for me for that year's team, obviously, I knew how good you were, and knew how good Maurice was. Kyrie was coming into his own for sure, but JP took leaps every game you saw that he was getting better. His confidence was growing. I think it was one game on the road against Providence where like he tried to go for a handoff. It wasn't there. He just scored up, knocked down the three. And I was like, he's got that in his package
Yeah.
too. Talk to me about like that quick development that we saw from a kid who redshirted. He was frail, didn't necessarily know what his job or his role on the team was. So literally the next year as a redshirt freshman, he comes out guns blazing and he's a totally different kid.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. Like we really didn't give Justin a role like what he was supposed to do. I think it was crazy because each week he kind of got better and understood what he needed to do. Like it was crazy to see him go from this Justin Patton, the 200-pound kid. Now he has to wait on him.
190.
Yeah,
Don't do
it was
that.
crazy.
Don't do that
Crazy.
to
I'm
him.
like, I'm looking at this dude like, no way he can play in the Big East. But to see him, each week get better and better, and then he come in his own. Now he got his own game. Now we're running plays through him because people don't know we really never ran plays for Justin like at the beginning of the season. Like we weren't throwing him the ball, letting him post up, none of that. And then he just kept getting better and better to where it was like we need the ball in his hands to make plays, not to score, maybe to pass, but we need the ball in his hands. And it was just crazy because I've never seen anything like that. And it was just so unexpected. Like, of course, we knew he would be an NBA player, but we didn't think he would come off his redshirt year and be almost a lottery pick.
So you guys had a pretty successful year. When I asked some of the fans on Twitter if they had any questions for you, a few people brought up that game winner against Xavier at the Garden, where you just literally walked in and just pulled up, splashed it after Xavier just made a play on the other end. Obviously, you're no stranger to big moments. You kind of hunt them whenever the game's on the line. I saw it when I was scrimmaging with you guys. Whenever we play pickup and you know that the game's on the line, all of a sudden your eyes get big and you're running towards the ball. Talk about like what it takes to step up in moments like that and to consistently do it over time, where even when you're overseas now, your team still asks you to take big shots and make big shots.
Yeah, I mean that all came from my favorite player, Kobe Bryant. That's one thing I always
Rest in peace to the
admired.
GOAT.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I always wanted to be like Kobe, but I knew my game wasn't like his. But I knew his mentality. So I knew when the game come on the line, like you gotta be ready to take that shot, make or miss. You just gotta be ready for it. And, especially on that stage, it was crazy. Me and one of my friends was talking about it like, what if I have like that Kemba Walker moment where he hit that game winner
Against
in
Pitt?
the Garden? And
Yeah.
so we was talking about it. And so it was crazy how it all happened. He came down. Especially I like how it happened because Trayvon Blue, he hit the step back three on me. So I got the ball going right back at him. And so, I know a lot of people tell me, why you didn't wait until the end and the shot the end of the clock to go down? And I'm like, I got so excited. Coach Mack was like, let's play. He said, let's play in my ear. And I didn't know what to do but make a play. So, that's definitely one of the biggest shots in my careers and one of the best moments. And all my family was there, my sister, my nephew, my mom and dad. So it was just a good moment to have with them there.
That's dope. You talked about that Kemba Walker moment. I played the big that switched against him a couple of times in Germany. And I find it very hard when I was playing against him to not say anything.
Because the whole game, I'm on play with you thinking, like, Kemba did you dirty.
Bro, I'm telling you, I had that thought literally like from tip off until the final buzzer. I was like, you're going to say something. Don't say nothing to him. Don't say nothing to him. And it didn't matter what was happening. He may have got a rebound. He may have got a dunk. I wanted to walk over and be like, what Kemba did to you was wrong, right? Like,
hey, I would lose it, man. I would lose it.
It's crazy to like the kind of guys that you see overseas that like you kind of grew up, like you said, like you watch those games, you vividly remember those games to the point where you always imagine yourself having one of those big moments. What are some kind of surprise players that you've seen overseas that you played against that you're like, oh, he's out here too? Like, I'll give you an example of mine. Like when I was playing in Germany again, the first time I played against Peyton Siva, this is a guy who, when I was in high school and I saw his hoop mixtape, I was like, yo, like, this is what I gotta be. This is what I gotta look like. So, like, have you ever had those types of moments? Obviously, playing overseas, playing a number of different guys.
Um, I probably say one of my memories probably be like Mario Chalmers. I played him. He's out here in Greece, and it's like I'm like, dang, it's like starting point guard NBA final. He's out of
Two-time NBA champ.
10,
Yeah.
and I'm going against him. So him, um, Norris Cole. I played Norris Cole this season. It was
Asvel,
surprising.
right?
Yeah. Gabe York. I've always had that about Gabe York. That's
I played
because
against Gabe York too.
his
Yeah.
mixtape, and I was
Yeah.
compared to him. Like rivals compare me. Like that's my player comparison. So like I've always wanted to go against him. So I got to go against him last year. So it's a lot. It's crazy. It's a lot of NBA guys or guys that you've seen in college that you would think that they should be in the NBA or out here too.
It just kind of speaks to the difficulties of actually making to the league. Like, you see all these guys who are alongside you, the media loves them, they have a great story, but for whatever reason, the league is a different animal, a different beat. Doesn't mean that they're not good players, doesn't mean that they don't deserve a check for
Right.
what they're doing. It just means they kind of have to find a different avenue. Like I mentioned earlier, you had 2 summer league stints, so you've been on those radars. I think you're still on those radars. I'm sure it's your ultimate goal, obviously, like the competitor that you are. I know that you're looking at some of these games, you're like, man, I should be out there too, right? So what are the things that you feel like you still have to work on in order to get to that level? And obviously, we're all rooting for you to get there.
Yeah. Really, my play point guard, more kind of a passer role. I think that's one thing that NBA teams are kind of skeptical on because I'm only 6'2". So they look at me as like, okay, you got to play point guard, so we know you can score. That's one thing all the NBA scouts say, like, we know you can go out and score on anybody in the NBA, but we need these other assets that you have, like defensively. That was one of the biggest things for me in college. They were like, can you defend? Can you defend these point guards in the NBA? And I think each season I played pro, I think I'm showing people that I can add on to my game. And that's why, I've had some teams when I signed this year that was in the NBA like, oh, okay, we're going to be paying attention to you because the season you had last year. So, they're just telling you to keep up the good work and all that. So, I think really just being able to play that point guard role and be able to be a defender and be a role player is something that, will help me get to that next level.
I've seen a couple of your games this year. I think I watched you actually pick up full court one-on-one against some point guards. So I guess you're kind of well on your way. If that's the feedback that they're telling you, that you're working on it for sure. I never thought I'd see you doing that, bro.
Me and Coach Mac, because Coach Mac, he'll call me every once in a while. We'll talk, and I'll be like, I'll tell him, like, if you have the player that I am now, and when I was at Creighton, I was like, yeah, you might have a chance to do something because I'm like, I'm a better defender. I'm actually trying to play defense. And he's like, ain't no way you playing defense. I'm like, Coach, I'm really out here trying to play defense. It's crazy.
It's great that you mentioned that because it was one of the questions I was going to ask you anyways. You becoming a better player, obviously now as a pro, you're older, you're wiser, you have more experience. What are some of the key differences that Creighton fans like wouldn't necessarily know about your growth as a player now that you're a pro compared to the player that they saw as a collegiate athlete?
I think I'm a better defender, like what we talked about. That's something I really have. Like teams usually lean on me to guard, if not the best player, one of the best players on the court. And my passing ability has gotten somewhat better, but ultimately they'll be really proud of my shot selection. I try to make sure I take better shots than I have in the past, but I still take my crazy shots here and there, but my shot selection has been a lot better since I turned pro.
The heat checks have to stay. That's your DNA, bro. You're not gonna get rid of that. That's just that's embedded in you at this point.
Heat checks are not going anywhere. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. People be laughing. I make 2 threes, and the next 4 shots is going up still.
Right. Talk about life and how different that is as a pro and as a collegiate athlete. Obviously, I always say, we're pretty much kind of doing the same thing as we were in college, minus the study hall, minus the three classes a day, so it's a little bit more free time, but it's also more opportunities to work on your craft. So kind of talk to me about like what you've learned from being a pro compared to what it was like when you were back at school.
The main thing really for me is taking care of my body. Uh, I remember back in college, even high school, I used to be able to just pick up the ball, no stretch, go windmills, with none of that. But now it's like
Right.
I got to do treatment. I got to make sure I lift. I got to make sure I eat right first, because if I don't eat right, your body starts feeling different. So I think just taking care of my, it's crazy. I probably spend 30 to 45 minutes before practice, about 20 to 30 minutes after practice, just taking care of my body and just making sure, because, you have all this extra free time. So, I just try to make sure my body is at its best. And, the goal is always for it to hold up as long as it can.
The season is such a grind too. Like we play, in your domestic league, you might play like 30 some games. You're playing EuroLeague as well too. So you add on another 25 to 30, depending on how far you guys make it, right? So the season is such a grind, and it goes from the end of August for most all the way up until like mid-May, early June for others. So you being on a team right now in Greece, who's considered one of the better teams always, you guys are always going to make a deep run in the Greek league, as well as depending on the year, you could be Final Four in EuroLeague too. Have you thought about, how much further on, we're in February right now, but how much further on you have until going before you have to go home?
I definitely have the countdown going for sure. It's that part of the year, especially. I always tell
Yeah,
myself, make it to March. Just make it to March, and everything will be good. By the
it's all downhill after March.
everything will start flying by after that. So, I think I always tell people the toughest part is usually like for me, January, February, because you've been here for like 4 months. Especially depending on your preseason too. We had a pretty crazy preseason where we was going 2-a-days like 3 times a week. So, it was a tough preseason. It just felt long. And especially with the COVID season, we didn't play. We ended up playing our first game until, I think, October 13th or something like that. So we went almost 2 months or 2.5 months without playing. So you just out here practicing every day. So that took a toll on me. But, I think, and you're traveling 2 days a week sometimes. Sometimes you got back-to-back road games. So that grind gets you towards the end, but you always see that light of the tunnel.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about you had a chance to play in two NCAA tournaments. We already kind of talked about this particular year's team and their shot of going far. Let's talk about the teams that you were a part of. And it's something that I've been kind of a stickler for. It always seems like Creighton gets kind of like a bad draw, or like whatever the case may be. But in Creighton's history, we still haven't made it past their first weekend. Your junior year, Coach Murphy was a Rhode Island player. You guys end up running into a hot Rhode Island team, and you get bounced out
Mm-hmm.
super early. And the following year, your last year, lo and behold, you play K-State, which is crazy to
It's
me.
crazy.
I always felt like the NCAA always tries to line up these stories just right. It happened
That's
to us
exactly
when
what they try to do.
Right, Doug versus Harrison Barnes, and it ended up giving us a second round matchup against North Carolina, where we felt like we probably shouldn't have been. I think we were 8 seed that year. So,
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about like obviously how tough it is to play in the NCAA tournament. And I always had this one regret that we just never made it past that first weekend. So, kind of talking about your experience and how you felt obviously that first year where you felt like you could have beat Rhode Island and didn't do that, and full circle moment comes back the next year around where you end up losing to the school that you went to in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. Like my junior year was tough because that was tough. I think at the time we were 7 in the nation, and we were rolling. Like we had everything figured out, and we were looking
Rolling,
like
yeah.
a Final Four team. And then with Maurice Watson going down, then that being my best friend, so that was tough. That was tough on me, and having to finish the season without him and trying to figure out everything. Like we did, I remember just we tried everything. Like I think I played point guard for 2 games to see if we can figure it out, and then we finally make a run in the Big East tournament and get to the tournament. So now we
Big
feel like
East
okay, we
tournament,
figured it
yep.
out. But we found a team that was very well prepared, and they got hot at the right time. So
Mhm.
that one always sucks because especially going like my following year doing NBA stuff and doing NBA leagues, every GM I talk to like, yeah, that team your junior year, I think they could have won the Final Four or gone to the Final Four just at how talented he was. So
Bro, I'm
that's one thing
telling
I
you, that
always
was
think
my
about.
favorite Creighton team to watch. That was my favorite Creighton team to watch, bro. Like,
It's,
I would
it's
stay up
crazy.
ungodly hours to watch that team because I knew every night something crazy was gonna happen. It's either like a pick and roll with Wap and JP for a dunk over a big, or you would just go baseline and tomahawk over a guy, or Kyrie would get a steal.
Mhm.
Like, it was just every game was like, yo, who's gonna do something crazy tonight?
And it was crazy because it's like we knew playing, like we knew no matter what. He was like, no matter what, at the end of the 4 minutes, we're gonna figure out a way to win. Like regardless of what happened, we're gonna figure a way to
Uh-huh.
win. So I do miss that team a lot because that I wish we could finish that and really see what could have happened. And then turn around to my senior year. I don't think people really don't realize how tough that K State game for me was. Just because I had a lot of emotions, with the situation and how everything was, and then to have to play them, and on top of that, it's like your senior year, and
Yeah.
you holding on to all those memories, and you're like, dang, I really don't want to let this go. So then you get carried away in all these emotions that you forget you got to play the game. So my
Mhm.
mind was on so many other things that I couldn't really focus on the game, and we ended up losing. So that was a tough one to swallow too, especially being my last game.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's super unfortunate that was your last game. You have given the Blue Jays fans so many great memories, obviously for those 2 years that you were able to play in, and for it to kind of end that way, obviously I'm sure you were super disappointed. You got one last chance to represent the Creighton Blue Jays, the same way that Ethan did in the Final Four 3-point competition. uh, I talked to Ethan about his experience, what he went through and how fun of a weekend that was. The last time that he got to put on the jersey was in a, celebrated way. And the same thing happened with you. You were celebrated for being there, for being a Blue Jay, for, obviously our mottos let it fly, and you got to represent doing the three-point competition.
Hmm.
So talk about that Final Four weekend, what it meant for you, to represent the Jays in that fashion one last time.
Yeah, that was a good moment to be able to put the jersey on, pick which jersey I want to wear for my last time, being able to wear it. So it was
Mhm.
it was definitely an honor. I feel like I got cheated a little bit on how they did the field, but that's another story. We'll talk about that another time. But nah, that weekend was good, and then I got to play in the college All Star game too. So it was good. Coach
All star,
McDermott,
yeah.
Coach Murph was there, Coach Lou was there. So then I got to watch the Final Four. So it was a good moment. I was glad I was able to have it.
Last question before I let you go. It's become one of my favorite questions to ask the guests who play overseas. What's going to be that first meal when you land back at the crib? I need to know.
Hey, I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad. See, look, my first meal every time I touch down, being from Texas, is
Yeah.
Whataburger.
I knew it. I honestly, I could
Whataburger every time. I'm
have.
telling you, it's crazy. Me and
I
my
have a teammate
teammates
this
talk
year
about
from
that.
El Paso, and he talks about Whataburger all the time. I'm like, bro, I've never had it, but I just know Texas boys feed on it.
Whataburger is the go-to. I'm telling you, Whataburger for a week straight. Oh, and a little bit of Chick-fil-A, but we Whataburger every day.
Yeah. So I know Justin Carter was Chick-fil-A, Will Artino was Chick-fil-A, you're a Whataburger. So I just got to make sure I keep a list of what everybody is saying because, that gives me kind of the options too. Now I'm thinking, damn, am I missing out? Like, what's going on?
Right. I'm telling you, everybody that goes to Whataburger for the first time calls me like, "Hey, you wasn't lying."
Yeah. Hey, Marcus, I appreciate you, man, for taking a little bit of time out, stepping back into the J with your boy. Man, obviously, stay safe. I know it's a long season. Keep grinding, man. I'm so happy for you where you're at. I get to watch some of your games. I'm just so excited every time you step onto the court and all that stuff. So it's so dope to see you doing wonderful things. Obviously, keep your head up. Do whatever you got to do. you're almost there, man. Like you said, once you reach March, bro, it's all
Yeah,
downhill from
that's all
there.
I gotta
So
do is
you're
reach
almost
the
there.
freshman. And
Yeah.
it's gonna work out. Watch.
Yeah, I appreciate you, bro. Everybody, make sure to like and subscribe to the Field of 68 Media Network. Don't forget to download the Locker Room app for pre and post game conversations with myself and also all the various different hosts. Marcus Foster, thank you one more time, bro. Appreciate you. Stay safe. You and your family, obviously. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, bro.